First initial thing was like, there's nothing wrong with you. What do I need to see a psychologist for? And I was quickly amazed and pretty shocked from like the first 5 or 10 minutes. We not only worked on the mental skills, but I was able to talk to someone that was basically a fly on the wall, had nothing to do with, wasn't at training, didn't know my family. And I felt that really like comforting to be able to speak to someone so openly and freely.
It's a surprising admission from one of the toughest athletes on the planet. Ali Day is recognised as the greatest ever Ironman in Australia, and he has spent 15 years proving himself in the most brutal race in surf lifesaving.
Ali Day, 4-time Australian Ironman champion. Ali Day crosses the tape and puts in one of the best performances you will ever see.
That is pure masterclass from the great man Ali Day.
Ali Day, the perfect weekend, 3 from 3. What a performance from him.
Look at the man, Ali Day. You can see the finish line in front of him. He is lapping it up for the crowd. It is Ali's day.
But there was a time when Ali sat across from a stranger in a quiet room. No surf, no crowds, no stopwatch. Just silence. And a conversation that would change the way he approached the sport. The kind of moment you don't see on the beach, in the water, or on the track. A moment that reshaped him from the inside out.
Lisa's been, a huge pillar in my career and my success. And just, as I said, this is going to be my last season this year. And
hang on, is that breaking news?
I haven't come out and announced it, but I think most people know.
After 15 years, Ali Day is staring down his final season. An athlete who's given everything to the sport is ready to talk about endings and new beginnings. But every finish line starts with a beginning, and Ali's story begins here. This is Performance Intelligence, the show that brings potential into everyday life. Let's go back to Year 10 high school. Who were your role models? Did you have a poster on your wall? Who were the men or women?
I had lots of I'm obviously a huge sports fan. I love sport. I just love the togetherness, the community, the emotions that I love going to any sporting game and just seeing someone so passionate about their team or the individual. So for me, I had a lot of surfing posters on the wall. Obviously, my dad being, a footy head, I had posters of Sydney Swans players. I had Brad Fittler on my wall, who was, and Craig Wing, the Roosters. I used to idolise those guys. I had Wallabies posters.
Are you a Roosters supporter?
Roosters supporter.
All right, it's going to be the quickest podcast ever. Thank you, ladies and gents, for out here.
Yeah, no, just obviously being from the eastern suburb, my dad, my granddad. Yeah, I love that. Obviously, not many, maybe some people do. Obviously, it doesn't sound like you do, Maisie. My weekends were playing footy on a Saturday, and then basically Saturday afternoon, my nan and pop lived in Randwick, so my dad would drive me and my older brother up. We're members of the SCG. We'd go watch the Roosters play that night. And because we were members, I basically had an up close and personal, not relationship, but my dad would have the pass, so you could walk down, and you'd probably remember those days of the old SFS, and the Roosters would warm up on like the old cricket nets, and you'd see basically Brad Fittler walk past, and you could touch him.
So there's your guys who are on the wall. You see,
they're the guys. I've still got my old jerseys at home that they're signed, and then you look at obviously my sport, and I had people like Kai Hurst, Shannon Eckstein, Zane Holmes, Wes Berg. The list goes on. So I was, to answer that question, sorry mate, in a roundabout way, I had lots of different heroes, multiple.
Do you think seeing Brad Fittler so close made you realise they weren't just someone idolised on the wall, that they were normal people, and that helped you make the bridge?
Definitely. Yeah, that, and also that it definitely in my mind, I thought at that age, how amazing would it be to be a professional, like to sign an autograph, for that to be your job, like you just said before, like your job is you work really hard for it, but your job's in sport, and I love sport. So it's pretty amazing that I've ended up where I am.
The next bunch of questions is very biased. I'm a mental performance coach, so I have to ask you, because your sustainability and success, it's not just 1 year. So to win a Coolangatta gold, but to win 10 and to be top of globally of your sport for 15 plus years, you've obviously gone deep. And we talk about you can train 3 areas in any domain. One is your craft. Your craft is complex because you've got to run, swim, paddle, surf ski as well. You can train your body, which you obviously do, and then training your brain. And I don't know the answer to this, so I'm really curious. What have you done from a mental skills point of view?
Mate, lots of different things, obviously, over the years. I think I've always been curious, and I think that helps. I've always been one not because of where I've brought up, but because of my upbringing in terms of always wanting to be better. And that came from because I wasn't as good. I was an average athlete. So whether that was like always, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but always seeking like information. My dad would always say that you can always learn something from someone. Don't just be so narrow-minded or narrow-focused on listening to one person. Listen to multiple different people. But also at the same time, don't get caught in the trap by it. And I've been there before where you listen to so many different people and your head's all of a sudden spinning. So at an early age, I was always curious, always watching, like as I said, so much sport over the weekends and looking at how an athlete would be behind the blocks at swimming or how they'd prepare. And I was so interested in, I love watching it now. Like I've been fortunate with the Roosters the last couple of years when they've played here on the Gold Coast against the Titans, that I've been in the sheds pre-game and, you get to watch the intensity, but also how different people prepare. I think that's like one of the best things. It's fantastic. In
a sporting team, when you've got 17 in NRL, you'll have so many variations. Yeah. You'll have some of I call them the Tyrannosaurus Rex going to war. So rugby union, it's your forwards or your outside backs in league and like, rah! And then your halves or your game drivers tend to be calmer.
That's it. Yeah. And like I said, I was always obsessed with that. And I think, so that was early on in the piece, and obviously probably 2012, 2013, that's when I started seeing a sports psychologist. I used Lisa for 3 or 4 years there. I was really successful with her, and then I moved from the Sunshine Coast to the Gold Coast. I'd stopped seeing her. I felt like, not that I didn't need it, but probably more so like, I was flying at that time in my career, and we might talk about today. I had an injury in 2019 and was really at rock bottom, and I called her back up, and I've been seeing her ever since. So our relationship basically goes from when I won my first Iron Series in 2012 to where I am now. And I use that for my mental skills. I use her, and as I said, I'm often always, reading. Love listening to podcasts, just love trying to learn as much as I can from.
That came out when we were chatting because I said, hey, we better start recording because we were already talking about different processes, different ways of learning. Were you quite rare back then tapping into the mental side? Because for me, when I was a runner, you'd see a sports psychologist when you were struggling, when you were really nervous, or cricketers are hitting, getting the outside edge on a swinging ball,
getting
or
the yips, what I mean?
League, union, AFL players dropping the high ball, got the yips. I'll go see the sports psych, sort out your head, mate. Yeah. But when you first saw Lisa, it sounds like that was more proactive.
My coach at the time, Michael King, who was a ex-champion Ironman, had won a Coolangatta gold. And
did all right himself too, didn't he?
Did very well himself. He suggested it to me, and I was fine in my career at that time. And my first initial thing was, my thought was, what is she gonna? What do I? There's nothing wrong with you. What do I need to see a psychologist for? And I was quickly amazed and pretty shocked from like the first 5 or 10 minutes. We not only worked on the mental skills, but I was able to talk to someone that was basically a fly on the wall, had nothing to do with, wasn't at training, didn't know my family. And I felt that really like comforting to be able to speak to someone so openly and freely. So,
can we go back to when you first worked with Lisa? I'm really curious. What are some of those skills? Because if a young athlete listening to this, or even someone in the corporate world or defence or the varied industries that listen and watch this, sometimes can't get their head around like what is mental skills? Yeah. So can you go back and take us through some of those skills?
I wish I brought my notes. I've still got some of which is cool. Still got some of the folders at home, that the first initial worksheets we sat down in our office in Sippy Downs that we did together. And I'm keeping those forever just in case I ever go into obviously coaching or, the kids are doing it. But basically to start, we would go through almost like my strengths and weaknesses and what my belief systems were and what the stories I was telling myself in my head, that I was bad at this or I was good at this, and we would sort of break those down. But in terms of some of the techniques that I've used over the years, like a lot of it at the start was a lot of cue words. you know. So strength was the ski, and rate was for my swim, and power was for my board. And we used piss bolt. Remember, as a kid, you have to piss bolt somewhere. I should use that for my transitions in running. And she's probably going to listen to this.
I'm going to get this to Lisa, piss bolt.
Yeah.
What I love about that is Lisa has very cleverly put it in your terms.
Yeah.
Because you're saying fast, snappy transition, but like piss bolt.
Piss bolt, get going. So like we'd have things like that. So that they were the things. But how do you come back to that when you're racing? More often than not, you're thinking about, am I going to win? Am I going to lose? When am I going to come? What's my mum doing? What's my partner doing? What are the kids doing on the beach? So she taught me how to bring my focus back to those key words. And how do you do that? I did it, you know, we did a lot of visualization. We did a lot of meditation. One day I remember laying there and we did, I was like basically hypnotized. We would visualize my races that I would have, and I was able to sort of.
Give me a timestamp. When was this?
This is probably 2012, 2013 sort of thing.
So imagery and visualization is massive now, just coming into sport back then. But you would have been one of the first in your sport doing that.
I was young. I was 22, 21, 22. I remember laying there on Christmas Eve. You know, this is before I won my first Ironman series. I went on to win it a few months later, and Michael King was like, I'd rather you stay up here. So my family came up here for Christmas rather than going home, which I was a bit disappointed in. But I remember laying on the lounge at her office doing the visualization and the complete hypnotized thing for an hour, and just put me in like a complete state. But as I said, I was pretty open to whatever it was at that time in my career. If it was going to help me, like, why not try it? Yeah, Lisa's been, you know, a huge pillar in my career and my success. And just, you know, as I said, this is going to be my last season this year. And we're quite obviously like really good friends now. It's more than just like a working sort of relationship. It's, you know, it's awesome to be able to sit there, and we've definitely ridden the highs and lows together. That's for sure.
Is that breaking news? Or are you going to be like John Farnham? He's back. Ali Day's back.
I hope not.
One last tour. One last Coolangatta goal. One last.
I haven't announced it yet. I don't even know how to go about doing that.
I will help you with this podcast.
To be honest. But yeah, like, as I said, I haven't come out and announced it, but like, I think most people know.
I'm going to send this to Earl Evans.
Yeah,
hey, Earl, Shaw and Partners.
Earl will probably, you know, he's so good at.
He's a good man, isn't he?
Great guy, and he'll help me when push comes to shove about how to go about.
He's involved with the Seagulls. I'm surprised he hasn't tried to get you over the peninsula.
I've tried to get him to the Roosters, mate. To be honest,
have you?
Yeah, I've tried to say, come on, mate. Shaw and Partners needs to start sponsoring.
We've got breaking news everywhere. Ali Day's last season. Earl Evans been courted to go to the Sydney Roosters.
He would just laugh. He would just say, mate, there's absolutely no chance that's happening. So.
Can we go back to the discussion on imagery and different types of mental skills you've used before racing?
There was one probably 3 or 4 years ago. I remember where I was racing down at Maroubra, and no joke, word for word, and visualization and the hypnotize we did on my balcony, and she just did it via Zoom. And the next day I woke up and the race played out like just exactly the same. So we've done it multiple times over the years. And
so do you remember that race? Talk us through that race in Maroubra.
Yeah, I remember. So what happened actually was we raced a Saturday and a Sunday, and on the Saturday it was relatively close to the visualization we did. It was more the Sunday when I woke up. And yeah, as I said, like basically from the moment the gun went in the last race to it finished, everything happened from where I was positioned, what I did coming in each time, how I felt, how my transitions were. And yeah, like I ended up having a really, really comfortable win in the Eliminator that day. And often they're the ones that are, you know, you not laugh about, but you just sort of, you know, she'll message me and say, I told you so, or something like that. So I've done a lot of that work with her. We've done a lot of the like pre-race sort of stuff together, like coming up with I remember my first year I saw Lisa. I remember going away and racing over in Smiths Beach. And prior to that, Red Bull were a sponsor of the series. So I'd chug a can of Red Bull. I'd put the big, you know, speakers, the big noise cancelling headphones on, because I was one of the youngest in the series then, and that's what everyone else was doing. And Lisa wasn't like, let's cut that. She was like, let's just try something different. So I remember having a towel over my head and doing breathing, doing box breathing, you know.
So Red Bull's going to ramp up your central nervous system massively.
You know, so I went completely opposite to what I was the year before. And because it was just a learning experience for me. This is my 3rd or 4th year as a professional then. As I said, one of the youngest there. And we introduced a lot of that breathing. So post-training, post-racing, but then also pre-racing. So I'd put a towel over my head and just, I felt a bit embarrassed doing it in front of the tent. So I remember walking down the beach a little bit and doing it. And we had
it wasn't embarrassing when you're standing on the podium saying,
I won that
sucked
race,
in you Red Bull chugging headphone wearing losers.
And I will say that I love Red Bull, and it does definitely has its need for whenever you might need it, sort of thing. But for me at that time, breathing was like another thing that she'd brought in. So
got to look after the sponsors, Ali. Good man.
That's it. Maybe in the future if they want to look after me. Yeah.
Well, they have a very big high performance department globally as well.
That. Like what they stand for and where they've taken sports, pretty phenomenal.
So you're young, early 20s. You're doing this great work with Lisa. You're getting success. You're doing the imagery, visualization. It's playing out. Did your training mates, did your competitors say, hey, you're doing all this different type work?
Yeah, probably did. I think anytime you go against the grain and you're in a bubble, from where I, not a bubble, but where I was sort of like training at the time, like all of it's, we're all pretty good friends, like really good mates, but it is dog eat dog. We're in a professional sport, individual sport, where not everyone can win, right? You're not in a team where the team wins. So as much as you love that, it was how do you go and find the edge somewhere else, sort of thing. So I think anytime you go try find that, people can sometimes see it as, they can, their necks get up, their backs get up about it, and they can find it a little bit confronting, a little bit different. And I definitely felt that from time to time, but at the same time, like with the work with Lisa, I just met my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and we were on the same wavelength of that sort of stuff. Not that I was deliberately trying to do things differently. It was more or less, this is what works for me, and I've actually got to stand for who I am. And I went back to being, I think probably more so that kid from Kiama that was going to give his all, do everything he could, and also just be himself. And that's, the breathing and all that sort of stuff suited me a lot better.
Are you just saying that now, or is that specific work you did with Lisa to go back and be that grounded kid, link back to your values? It's lovely talking and working out that thread. It really was an ideal background for high performance. And the fact you weren't great to start with, you had to work. But did Lisa actually get you to reconnect with that, or is that something you've just said now?
No, Lisa definitely did. We've spoken about it heaps. As I said, she was there from basically the beginning of my professional career. I hadn't won a professional race before I started seeing her. So we went through that, and I went through it with my wife too. Like she was from that same area as well, down at Jervis Bay, down in Nowra, and she obviously knew my parents, knew all my friends and things like that, knew where I was from and where I was trying to get to. So as I keep saying, just it was open to having and wanting to learn a lot at that age.
So far the story is idyllic. No setbacks.
No.
Training hard in a really good environment, but every story needs a villain, or every story needs a turn. Take us to 2019.
Yeah. Basically, I've just come off winning. I've had an amazing year. I've just gotten married, just been in Hawaii on holidays. Was preparing for the Coolangatta goal, which is basically a 20-week preparation. That's how many weeks I'd like to have. And the sport of surf life saving tried to, and the Iron Series tried to bring in, if you remember Ninja Warrior on TV, Maisie. I'm not sure if you remember that sport. It's probably still around.
I may have dated one of the Ninja Warriors.
So you know it well then, mate.
I've just got it. Hello, Rebel.
Yeah. So they basically tried to amalgamate those two races, at one of our races at a Ninja Warrior race, put it on the beach, put lots of money on it, put the same amount of money on it than the same amount of money as the Coolangatta Gold in the Iron Series. So it really, it divided our sport. It was probably the most controversy there's been in the sport since the cereal wars back in the 2000s between Uncle Toby's and Nutri-Grain. And I think you're gathering where I'm at as a person. I'm at that stage in my career, and I'm still like that a lot now. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I just want to stay out of the way. I just want to do what's right for me. So, I was signing the petition to sort of say, no, I'm against it. But then I was speaking to the organiser saying, well, maybe it might suit me. It's a long distance race. There's 25 grand. I've just gotten married. That would help, sort of thing. Long and behold, I was out on a photo shoot on a Friday afternoon, probably 2 or 3 weeks into my pre-season. I was bloody tired, and I fell off a set of monkey bars at a photo shoot. Fell down, broke both my wrists. They were at the time just like bent like S's. And I'd broken my wrist before, like skateboarding and stuff like that, but I'd never seen anything like that before. I'm sure you have.
Broke both at the same time.
Both the same. I jumped straight up and, or didn't jump up, but you could imagine I was in shock and I just sort of looked down and I started thinking, I don't know why I thought that. I just thought, oh, maybe they might just like pull them back into place. And I had a mate, TJ Hendy, Trevor's son, another great guy. And thankfully he was there with me that day. He drove us to the hospital. And I remember the nurse just saying, oh, they're broken for sure. You're going to need surgery. And I remember just thinking, how am I in this position? How am I in this position? How many weeks am I going to be out? She's like, you'll be out for ages. And my initial thought was the Coolangatta Gold. It was like, there goes that. So basically, a few days later, I'd gotten surgery. You know, again, extremely lucky and grateful that I knew people like Hal Rice, who was from Q-Scan, and Dr. Unglamorous and Peter Jackson from Q-Scan as well. That, you know, again, thankfully, I had these relationships with people that were able to get me in to see the best people. I could get scanned straight away. You know, I had the best medical treatment, and I should give a shout out to Rabina Hand Therapy Clinic. You know, people there that literally saw me every day, I think, for 3 months straight. So it was it's a bit not embarrassing now because I know a lot of people go through a lot of worse things, Maisie, but in terms of like my professional career, that's probably the worst thing I went through.
Well, you think about you've been out in massive swell. You know, the ocean. I can't believe that we booked this room here in the Gold Coast.
Yeah,
just
like this.
We've just totally fluked it.
Yeah. I feel very calm looking at all this stuff, mate.
I love the ocean, Ali. I've had nowhere near as much contact with it as you, but it's a dangerous beast. Beautiful, but dangerous beast. You'd think you'd have an accident related to surf lifesaving, but you had a silly accident falling off bloody monkey bars.
Yeah.
Did that piss you off as well? You go, fuck.
Yeah, you could imagine, I think you could imagine, and the people listening at home would, driving to work, whatever it might be, you could imagine the emotions that were going through my head. Why was I there? Why didn't I stand up for what I really believed in? And maybe I truly believe the silver lining in it for me was that, I should have stood by what I believed, and whether that was doing it or not doing it and coming out and being myself. And that was the reason, that was a lesson I learned through it, that you need to wholeheartedly be yourself rather than trying to please so many people. And I got stuck in the middle, and ultimately I paid the price for it. But yeah, it turns out that I've come out a better person, a better athlete from it.
One of my favourite sayings is, I don't know the secret to success, but I do know the secret to failure is trying to be everything to everyone.
Yeah, far out. That's a good quote. That's exactly what it was.
That's what it was, yeah.
That's exactly what it was at that time. And of course, I was angry. I was embarrassed, pissed off, wanted to blame people. Lost my identity, went through, obviously that's when I started seeing Lisa again, went through a really pretty bad bout of like depression and sort of like mental illness sort of thing, anxiety, had a panic attack for the first time, all these things that were not me, like I'd never, ever had that before, which was, as I said, for someone that had just gotten married, was successful, beautiful house in, across the road from the beach, basically had all these things going for me, was not looking forward to waking up the next day, which is crazy to think about now.
Yeah. Well, because your life had been not blessed, you worked hard, you had a good upbringing, good background. Adversity teaches us a lot. And at the time, if you ever have somebody say, hey, breaking your wrist, missing out on the Coolangatta Gold, putting your career on hold, it's a good thing. You're like, hey, you're a freaking idiot, mate. But when you look back, the toughest times in our life, we learn the most from.
Best. I've had a habit of like coming back really well, and that's probably what we'll talk about. But yeah, I often say it to young athletes when they miss a race or they get injured or something like that. And I've got to be careful so I don't mince my words, but you'll know the silver lining. It's going to feel shit now. It's going to feel shit probably for the next couple of weeks, months, but you'll get the reason why pretty soon.
How young are you now?
I'm 35.
So you're still fresh. You're a third of the way there.
There you go.
Think of it like that. You're a third of the way there.
That's pretty good.
You got good wisdom.
Yeah, as I said, good parents, good people. Kel's been awesome in my life. Obviously, she's probably been the most significant person. So, as I said, mate, keep banging on about it. Just work hard, but I'm lucky with it.
You also make your own luck. In researching you, thinking about you, to have the sustainability where you are, you've had a few upsets, a few setbacks. you've obviously had to unlearn. And this is a topic that I'm really, really digging into, because to be good for a year, you can train your ass off and maybe have a bit of luck, but to back it up and to back it up and to back it up and then to have a setback and to go again, it's as much what you unlearn as much as what you drop. So with that as a theme, what have you dropped over the years, or what have you had to unlearn that initially got you going?
Yeah, I think back in 2000, if we're talking about some of the lessons, that's what you mean, that I've sort of learned along the way. I think back in 2000 and just before I started seeing Lisa, I had a season out there as well. And I basically reinvented the way I looked at my nutrition, my diet, my sleep, my performance, sort of physical and mental health as well at that time. So I was lucky that I met the high performance manager at the Sydney Roosters at the time, 2013, Keegan Smith, son of Brian Smith, if you remember him from Para and stuff like that. And he was massive. I remember sitting down with him at a paleo cafe. So that was learning a new thing. I had to drop the old.
That says it all, doesn't it? Sitting down at a paleo cafe.
Remember those?
Yeah, I do.
Remember those, the orange buildings. I remember meeting him at Bondi Junction thinking, but he had an answer to everything that I was going through at the time. Was I dreaming? Was I walking around barefoot? And I know some of this sounds a bit woohoo. Was I journaling? Was I taking this? Was I in the sunlight? This is, as I said, nearly 15 years ago, were you using an infrared sauna? Were you ice bathing?
So he was ahead of his time.
So ahead of his time. Was I juggling? Was I doing this? Was I eating that? Was I eating, drinking coconut water instead of Powerades and stuff like that? So I had to unlearn, drinking Pepsi on the weekend and eating Domino's and taking prescription medications to get me through training, which all of that has a time and place. So that was probably one of the biggest lessons that I'd had to dump and learn again, which has helped me, maintain my edge and I guess maintain my consistency over the years. Another thing I think would be when I did get injured that afternoon at the monkey bars would probably be I took another lesson of I got a deeper understanding of, gratitude, empathy, mindfulness around that time. Was able to sort of, obviously the carpet or the rug got pulled from underneath me during that time. So I was very attached to my identity as being the Ironman, and I had to let go of that. So I started to have wins in my life and be happy for the wins in my life that were outside of the sport. I was definitely hanging my hat on winning races and being loved and being known for that. Whereas more often than not, people liked me for just the way I was and loved me for the person I was.
I've got to talk to you more about that, because with athletes that I work with, we'll talk about performance-based identity. Yeah, I perform, therefore I am. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that got you to start and to the podium. But when you are just the athlete, or you are just the banker, or you are just the entrepreneur or the lawyer, at some stage that either stops or transitions. So you've got to have a purpose-based identity. Yeah. So your experience is deeply rooted in performance psychology. I don't know whether you realise that or not. You've had people come into your life, Lisa, Keegan, other people. So you've obviously learned and opened up. What age was that where you started to think about who am I outside of being an Ironman?
I was 28, 29. So it was just after I got injured. I listened to a podcast on that, on Hugh Van Cuylenberg from the
Gratitude, Empathy, Mindfulness.
It was actually Sandor Earl who was on his podcast. I heard Sandor talking about, I was on the way up to the Sunshine Coast. I just was able to start driving after 3 or 4 months, and I drove up there, and it was lovely. I remember just driving up there, listening to this podcast and thinking, I'm going to give that a go when I can start writing. So every night I would just type on my phone the things I was grateful for, and I started practicing some empathy, and I started, mindfulness and all that sort of stuff. So, and then I guess to bring it back, that's one of the biggest things that I had to unlearn to learn, if that makes sense. And I feel like there's been other little things along the way from a performance perspective and a mental perspective. I think, over the last couple of years, I even wrestled with it today. I've had such a good week of training. Today's a recovery day, and we normally do 4Ks on a Friday, and today I did 3, and that sometimes...
So 4K swim?
Yeah, just a 4K
I just want to clarify that. I assume, because some people are listening to this going, hey, Johnny, hey, Dolores, I did 4K this morning, but on the bike, running. A 4K swim.
Yeah, so it's just normally a recovery the session for us, and I still wrestle with And you would understand.
Can I just give you a balance with the real world? And I do a bit of swimming. 4K is not a recovery day, mate. 4K. If I do 4K, so Tallabudgera when I'm up here at Mum and Dad's, it's my spiritual place. Yeah. And I look at my time sometime if I'm chasing the current. Geez, I swim as fast as you, but the current's behind me. Yeah, it's all relative, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think I've got to loosen the grip sometimes of, hey, it's potentially it is my last year. You've been so successful for so long. It's okay to sort of, take a K off here or take a day off there and ultimately be better for our bigger session tomorrow. So that's just you're constantly learning and you're constantly talking to, my coaches and your sports psychologists or whoever it may be. I'm really lucky with the people that have come into my life with that sort of stuff that can sort of guide me, particularly at this age.
There's obviously a core value around curiosity or or maybe it's balance between the two. Curiosity to get it better and to improve, balance with appreciation. Because you seem very grateful. And after you mentioned that podcast with Sandor, you thought about that more, but you still have a hunger to grow, to improve. Talk to me about the dance between the two.
Yeah, I think there's that, there's that appreciation that your parents I watched my mum in particular, the amount of things she would do and how appreciative she was for the things that she would do for people or people would do for her. So if that makes sense, I've always tried to, like I said in the lift on the way up, mate, it's what goes around comes around. I might not necessarily be paying the favour to you, but I'm going to pay it to someone else and someone's going to pay it to me, if that makes sense. And that's how I believe the world sort of works. So the people that have come into my life have been people that I've been so appreciative of. But at the same time, I think you asked, when you get that information, going and using it and actually, because I think a lot of the time, a lot of people get it and they don't go do anything about it, or they might do it for a couple of weeks and, fall off get off the train track sort of thing. But as I said, I treat my job really professionally, and I know that you're retired for a really long time after. So I want to make sure that, the people that are a part of my team that I go off and seek the information from, I'm, seeking it from the right people, being appreciative of it, but also going ahead and use, not returning the favour, but, going hard after it, if you know what I mean.
My grandmother, God bless her soul, had a beautiful saying. So Irish Catholic, never heard Nan swear, apart from this one quote. And her quote was, "Be careful the toes you tread on today connect to the knees that support the arse that you might need to kiss next week." And I can remember her saying, "Nan," from an Irish Catholic, she said arse. Wow.
Yeah.
What a beautiful quote.
Yeah, it's so good, mate. You got some good ones. So yeah, I mean, there's so many people, as I said, there's a guy, the high performance manager of the Gold Coast Suns, Alex Rigby, and he's a really good mate of mine, and he's been there the last 3 or 4 years in my career and has really sort of helped me. So there's people like that, my coach Zane Hamill, Kyle Samuelson, Joseph Coyne in the gym. I've got multiple people that are in that bubble with me and want the best for me, but also, when it's all said and done, they're there to sort of be your mate as well, which is a special relationship.
So for people watching the Shaw and Partner series or watching the Coolangatta Gold, they'll see you racing a whole bunch of others and think it's an individual sport. Yes, and the world's best athletes have the world's best support teams. You've got a great support team. It sounds like you're really conscious and considered who is in that team.
Yeah, and that's been the way probably for the past decade. As I said, from the research, I'm curious. And I think you just know, I've known you for an hour now, and I feel like, we're on the same wavelength sort of thing. I want people around me that not only that I can trust, but I can sort of be myself. So, that's why I chose Service Paradise. That's why I swim at Bond University. That's why I see the same doctor. I've got the same physio. That's why I've got the same chiropractor, the same acupuncturist. I've used that same group of people for a really, really long period of time now, and they all interconnect. They all get along really well. And there's going to be a time, obviously, in the future where hopefully I can just go around to their house and sit there and have a barbecue.
Or have a relaxing massage rather than...
Yeah, and just talk about, hey, remember that time we had to rehab the calf and we had to come up with this, or we had to do that. So I'm looking forward to that. But also I think those people are really appreciative that they've been on the journey with me as well.
For a lot of people listening to this, watching this, who are aspirational, there's a message there and a really good learning. Get some great people in your support team that help you grow, that help you go to that next level. It's easy to set and forget, and high performance is not a full dividend reinvestment plan, which a lot of people think, hey, I've had a good year, good 2 years, I'll just keep doing the same thing. You've reinvented, you've changed. And researching this, one other thing you did, this is a podcast, the Rat podcast, on Chats with Rat. I was really curious about this, and there's a bit of a personal lens on this, which I'll get to. You said, I'm a guy that swims with no goggles on because my heroes did it. Shannon, Zane, Kai. I started the professional series and I wore goggles and thought if they were winning races, why aren't they wearing goggles? They obviously help, but it is one less thing to worry about. Doesn't it sting the shit out of your eyes? Like,
look at my pterygiums. I think I said that to Rat that day on the podcast, and he said, "What are pterygiums?" They're the things
Those things there.
I'm going to have to get operated one day when I finish. So, I just think, as I said, I know I keep bringing it up, but as a young kid, I was watching the races and I was watching the games, and I was always taking notice of what was happening behind play or what they were doing in their warm ups. What was their little thing, and then you go away and you might copy a few of their things, and then you get a little bit older and you come up with your own process and formula to what works. And the reason I started the series and started my professional career wearing goggles, and then I looked at those guys and they weren't wearing them, and I thought, well, they're winning races, they're my heroes. Why?
So the goggles came off.
The goggles came off, yeah.
On the same podcast, you were asked about what is your best leg, and you said swim. It is the first thing I started as a young kid. I don't look pretty doing it, but I'm efficient at it. I can do it really well when I'm tired, which is the bread and butter of an Ironman. If you can swim while tired, it just underpins all of those legs. The fitter the athlete, the better you'll be. The fitter you are, the better decisions you're going to make.
That's just so true. You'd agree with that, wouldn't you?
Totally. But what I also agree, or what I like in that statement, is it's the hard work. So when we see you race, it's the icing on the cake. I said this in a previous conversation earlier today with Dr. Bill. High performance is really boring. And I often say that to people, like, what? No, you're like, Ali Day lives this glamorous life. Do you have a car?
You're exactly
do you have a car sponsor?
No.
Okay. So do you have other sponsors?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a good looking young rooster. You're fit, you're lean, you got hot misses, two young kids. Yeah. So everyone sees all that external and goes, wow, what a life.
Yeah, it's a glamorous. Yeah, they see that for sure.
So tell us about some of the unglamorous stuff behind the scenes, the early morning starts. What time?
Yeah, like this morning I got home from swimming and Kel was like, geez, you're all right. And I was like, that's just my back in the mornings at the moment. I hurt my back last year. So for example, just with that, like there's a 10 to 15 minute process that I've got to go through every day of the year. It's the same boring, monotonous thing that I have to do. Otherwise you end up being injured. You end up sitting out. You end up obviously, losing sponsorships, not being able to race.
So every morning for 10 or 15 minutes, you just have a routine to get your body moving?
Yeah, there's so many routines in my day, so many habits that I've created over the years.
Is it mobility? What is it?
Just mobility. The alarm goes off around the same time. It's the same sort of just 4:30 every morning.
Yeah, high performance is glamorous. What time do you go to bed?
Oh, it's like 8 o'clock. Sometimes this week's been not terrible for sleep, but just in terms of, you talk about young kids and the house isn't always like the, it's tough for my wife. She's sleeping with the two kids. I'm, in a kid's single bed, which is fine. And I often think that it can always be so much worse, Maisie, like if that makes sense. Like
how old are the boys?
1 and 4. And they got, like you said in the opening, they're energetic. You know what the kids are like.
I've got some experience on this. And my advice, whenever someone says, so with young kids, what's the best way to get sleep? Suck it up and come back in 5 years. Like wait till they get to 4 or 5 and then they'll balance out.
Yeah. So, but it's mate, but I'll miss it. I'll miss, the kids. I'm sure you do, mate. You miss the kids being at a young age. I'll miss.
Well, I've got bookends. I've got a 17-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old. So I've got one finishing school, one hasn't even started. Yeah. So one of the reasons for doing this podcast, I need to live to 90 or 100 to pay for the school fees. I'm not joking.
I think, there's obviously trade-offs with every job that you do. There's definitely the unglamorous stuff. I think the biggest thing is that people don't see is the amount of, sheer hard work that you have to do every single day. Like I train 16 times a week.
16?
Yeah. So you do 3 a day and you do 1 on a Saturday.
Okay. So I'm going to paint the picture really clearly.
But I will say, there's a lot of, I'm not saying I'm the hardest worker out there. There is so many people. Like, I'm a big fan of the Tour de France. I don't know any of the riders, but I know a lot of the NRL guys and things like that. Everyone, and it doesn't just have to be in sport. There's so many people like yourself, mate, that are doing big days.
Yeah, but let's come back to you, because this is a podcast talking to you. You go to bed at about 8:30 p.m. You're up at 4, so you're getting a good 8 hours sleep. Yeah. You're trying to. You're sleeping in a separate room to Kelly and the kids, to get that good sleep and quality sleep. So you've obviously got a great relationship connection, because you don't just sneak off. And
there's a bit of guilt. There's definitely a lot of guilt there, which you got to learn. Right?
I tell a lot of athletes I work with to do this, especially if it's before a game. Because you've got a lot of players, if it's a male player, thinking they're doing the right thing by supporting their partner. And yes, lads, you do need to at the right time. But when it's your job to perform for 80 minutes in front of, it can be a stadium of 100,000 people, or it can be a global audience of millions, you need to do everything to get set up. So you obviously work that out 16 times a week. So talk us through your average week. Some people are watching this, Ali, going, I train 16 times a year.
Yeah, but this is my job, right? And that's the thing. Like, I say it to people when I go do presentations or speak to kids, and they're like, "Well, that's so many times," and I'm like, "Well, people go work at Woolworths from 6 a.m. till 7 at night. I don't think there's no difference. It's just what you're wired to do." And
it is. So answer the question, son. So what does a week look like? Talk us through Monday.
Basically, Monday's like swim, gym, ski. Tuesday,
give us some distances and times.
Swim in the pools like between 5 and 6 Ks, and then your run sets are at the moment are between 8 and 12, 8 and 10 sort of thing. Your gym sessions are 45 minutes. Your ski sessions are from 12 to 14 Ks. Your board sessions between 5 and 7 Ks. Your Pilates session's an hour, and then your big iron session off the back of like tomorrow morning or Saturday morning is like 3 to 4 hours sort of thing.
So you do 3 really big sessions? Is it how it works?
Yeah, it's sort of like the structure of my week is Monday. I like to use that day to sort of get myself going again, set the week up. Tuesday morning's a good block for me where I run and swim. Those sessions are pretty taxing. Tuesday afternoon's a recovery session on the board where you do a lot more skills. Like you said at the start, we're in a sport where we race in Mother Nature. So
you're playing on all this stuff?
You can be as fit as you want. You can, you've got to be good in big surf. You've got to be good in flat surf. You've got to be good when it's, southerly, when it's a northerly, when it's a westerly, when the tide's low, when the tide's high, when there's a current, when there's a bank. Like you've got to know the ocean. So Tuesday arvo is a recovery board session where you're just getting time. Wednesday's a swimming. There's a gym session in there. There's a hard ski session that night, and then Thursday's pretty much the same as well. So that from Tuesday morning to basically Thursday night, you're hammer and tong.
There's no recovery day in that period.
It's basically like you get Tuesday afternoon to sort of lay low a little bit, like the pressure comes off, but you got to get yourself right. Like I remember Shannon Eckstein telling me years ago, I was like, how do you do it? Because his percentage rate, I never trained with him, but I'd imagine it was like 98, 99% for his weeks were just so consistent, like bang. I remember talking to his coach and he would just highlight the days that he wanted to hit. So there's probably 4 or 5 sessions each week out of those 16 that they all have their purpose and they all have their place. But there's 6 or 7 sessions there that you need to really get up for and nail. So that the recovery is important. The sleep, as you said, is important. The nutrition, all that stuff, the mental side behind it all is really important as well.
And then Sunday, or do you have a weekend day where you do chill, or just a?
Yeah, tomorrow. As soon as I finish at 10 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock tomorrow, you get all that, and it's one of the best times of the week. Because you come home and my mind can just drops out. It can rest. You know what I mean? It's not planning. It's not plotting. Sunday night it starts again. But I'm organised. I'm old school. I use a diary. I've got a spreadsheet that I use that I'm looking at that I'm constantly adjusting and planning. And
so the next set of questions is the exercise physiologist in me. Okay, so I'm going to ask a few questions based on the science. You're not having a day off. It's really interesting. You and your coach are dividing your days into blocks of half days by the sounds of it. So you can train of a morning and have a half day off. Yeah. Then recovery or down regulation is twofold. It's psychological detachment. As you said that, you sunk into the chair. Yeah. So you're relaxing, you're getting out of those high-end brain waves where we're looking at beta and at least going alpha, where you're relaxing, ruminating, daydreaming. The other part is the shift from sympathetic, smashing your nervous system, to relaxation, parasympathetic. Wearable tech, what do you use?
I used to use a Whoop for ages. They were a sponsor of mine, and they'd done a lot. I did a lot of work with those guys over the first couple of years of them being here in Australia. At the moment, currently, I don't really I wear a heart rate monitor where I run. I track my sleep. Basically, just from I use an Oura ring from time to time. But I'm starting to know myself really well of what I need at this stage in my career, and I always go by like the hydration is like a big one. They all, as you know, Maisie, they all sort of go hand in hand.
So hydration, and this is a really graphic test, but it's just the colour of your piss.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So if you're hydrated, you're eating. I've never really tracked calories before. I just know when I haven't eaten enough or I've eaten too much, you know what I mean? So always try eat, like I said before, like Keegan said, always try eat everything in moderation, clean, and then sleep is a big thing. So that's probably one thing that I've had to learn over the last couple of years, because you got 2 young kids. I'm in a small house, so on those days, Kel's amazing. She gets the boys out. I do definitely find it hard to sort of unwind, whereas my early days in my career, I could come home and have like a 2-hour sleep. Now I really struggle to sort of switch off day to day, which is, obviously something I'm working on at the moment.
Have you worked out those little micro transitions? Yeah, because you can really shift gears in 30 seconds to 3 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. I use like a Shakti mat. I don't know if you know what they are. It's like an acupuncture mat sort of thing. It's got it's about this big, and it's got 1,000 like little needles in it. I just
sounds really painful.
Yeah, it's really painful for the first minute, but it just drops me out. I use the app Calm, and obviously I've got a lot of breathing techniques that I use. And but yeah, as in terms of like wearables, mate, I think Whoop's great. I think Aura's great, and I think they definitely give you a good understanding of of what you need.
But then you get that
then
performance intelligence. So you know resting heart rate.
We're always using heart rate at training. We're always using tracking in terms of like our A1, A2, A3. And I know, as I said, I know my body pretty well now that I'm pretty open to.
What's your resting heart rate?
At the moment, at the sleep, it's probably at like 37.
37 beats a minute.
Like that. Yeah, that's the lowest point of a night. But it does get, like in those peak gold times, whether it's accurate or not, it can get lower, 35, 34 sort of thing. I've seen.
I think when you're training 16 sessions a week, what's that, 30, 35 hours? Yeah. It'll strengthen that cardiac tissue.
Yeah, you can see it. It's pretty amazing. It's the best feeling. I was running yesterday, and I remember I did like a 40-minute run just at aerobic yesterday, and it's just, as you know, Maisie, it's one of the best feelings. Like when you...
Now give me context, 40-minute run, what pace?
Just at like 5-minute pace, but heart rate's at like 110, 120 sort of thing. So it just feels, you start, whereas like a few weeks ago, a few months ago, you're doing, can't wait for the 40 minutes to be over. It's just a great feeling being fit.
Let's talk about fitness, fire brigade and the future. I just wanted to build an alliteration of the letter F. Yeah. Fitness, you're a business person. I realised this through a mutual friend, Keegan Hipgrave. Shout out to Keegs, who introduced us. You've got business here on the Gold Coast as well, a fitness business.
Active Strength Co. Got great business partners. Anthony, who I started it with, Anthony Bartolo, is just a beautiful man, big heart, and great. He's great mates with Keegs, and he's been the heart and soul of the business. What is that? 8 years, going on 9 years soon. So I've also got another business partner, I should say his wife Bridget, my partner Kel, and obviously Luke Kennelly, who's just bought in probably 2 or 3 years ago, has just made the business. I don't want to say boom, but it's going really well.
How many different franchises do you have?
We've got one in Burleigh, one at Ashmore, Nerang, one down at Coolangatta, Ballina, Melbourne, one up at like Bundaberg sort of thing. So not Bundaberg, sorry, Toowoomba. So they're growing. Our goal at the start back in 2017 was everyone said don't open a gym.
Yeah.
In Burleigh,
and then COVID came.
And that was like again similar to when I got injured. I was lucky that I had. I wasn't training or racing, so I got to sink my teeth into to work, and I learnt a lot during that time about running a business.
It'd be also nice for you to get outside of sport and competition and have different conversations.
And Bart's was a footy player, I was an Ironman, and we wanted to create a gym where people in the afternoon, it was like a sporting club, right? You remember what it's like when you turn up to footy, or you exactly know what a locker room's like. We wanted to have maybe not necessarily a locker room, but
different stories.
You get what I mean. But we wanted to create an environment where say, for example, someone could turn up from Melbourne or wherever it might be for the first time and they felt like, you know, they were welcomed, they were accepted, they could get in and train. I really felt like we've been able to build that, and that's why it's been successful. We attract the right sort of people at Active, and as I said, I don't have that much to do with it now. I'm still obviously a founder and director in the business. There's a chance that when we move back to Kiama in 12 months' time, we might open one up down there, because I really believe not only the community side behind it, but the actual training philosophy that Bart's, who writes the program, it's actually going to make you fitter, better, faster, stronger.
God, we're getting scoops. I'm just picking that up now. So definitely retiring in 12 months. Now moving back to Kiama, and ladies and gentlemen, a new awesome community-based, science-backed, results-focused fitness centre coming to your local community. Yeah, that was my segue into Fire Brigade. When we spoke 6 months ago.
Probably, yeah.
You were trialling for the Fire Brigade. You're in.
Yeah. Touch wood, I mean. I've just got to get through the medical and a few police checks, but I think hopefully
I think you might do all right. Medical, resting heart rate 37.
Yeah, it's something that I've had my eye on for a really long time. I wasn't very smart at school. I didn't really apply myself either. It was more just, you know, my head was focused on sport, right? And trying to put all my eggs in one basket there. But it was one of those things I've always sort of looked at and thought, how awesome would that be? You know, I've come from a community-based sport and surf lifesaving where you serve your community to another thing. And I think that's really in my DNA, like helping people and being under pressure and, you know, staying fit and healthy. And it's, as I said, not in there yet, but it's something that, I'm really, really excited about.
I think you're going to love it. My brother's a fiery, and Mark applied 4 or 5 times. It's hard to get in.
Yeah, really hard. As I said, I was lucky. I had I just used the same model as what I do when I don't know something about something in sport, and I rang some friends that were in it, and, you know, I owe them a few cases of beer and a few dinners, to be honest, because the amount of times I'd just want to know what the process was, what the step was, how best I could wrap my head around it, how I could prepare for it. So I was lucky that I had that, and obviously I worked really hard for it. Those 3-week intervals where you had different things each week, I just tried to put my best foot forward.
So I just want to zoom out on that. You applied for the Fire Brigade and you approached getting into the Fire Brigade like you do a competition. So you said earlier, the Coolangatta Gold is a 20-week preparation. So when you found out you were going for the Fire Brigade, what did you do? Like, who helped you? Who was in your team to get you?
So I basically I had a couple of guys. I had a guy called Bo Wheeler, who was an ex-Ironman as well. He's in the fire. He's a couple of years ahead of me, and he was just so amazing with his time. You know, we spent hours together on the phone about, hey, you know, how do I best prepare for this? And then I knew another guy from Queensland that put me with another guy called Murray. You'd probably hate me saying it, and I never even met Murray in my life, you know, but I feel like, as I said before, like what goes around comes around. And I had this guy, Murray and Bo, basically, you know, every step of the way being like, this is how I would do it, this is how I would get ready, sort of thing. And I think when you're a good person, I'm not saying hopefully I am, mate, but good things come back. And as I said, I remember Bo telling me that, mate, if you're serious about it and you want to get in, you know, prepare like it's a Nutri-Grain round. So I had, as I said, you have almost like 3-week intervals for each thing. So where you're doing your interview or your verification or your pattern. And as I said, like, I remember training for going to my gym on a Saturday wearing a ski jacket and a beanie and tracksuit pants and old shoes to prepare for the physical test. And people would probably laugh. They're like, mate, you're an Ironman. How are you going to miss out? But I wanted to cross every, you know, dot every I, cross every T to make sure that when I got there, I was prepared. I remember doing the physical at the gym, and you've got 15 minutes basically to do this part of the test. And I finished in like 14:45. And the test was that week, and I'm saying to my wife, Kel, I'm actually a bit nervous, you know, and everyone's sort of laughing it off.
Can I just say, it would be fucking embarrassing if like, the greatest Ironman of all time missed out on a Fire Brigade medical and fitness test. You go bury your head.
Oh, mate, exactly. I'll try to
imagine your mates.
Okay, mate, so, never let me live it down. So I went into it, as I said, every step of the way, like it was a race. I got down there and warmed up and took a gel and stuff like that.
Did you take a gel?
People were probably thinking, this guy's like...
Hey, who's that guy with the headphones drinking Red Bull?
Yeah. But as I said, most people all prepare differently. That's how I'm wired. And if you got an opportunity to do it, my mum always said that if you're going to do something, do it right. Do it right the first time.
So Kiama, fitness center, fiery, it's somewhere in that area. The third F, the future. If there's a crystal ball, what do you reckon you're doing in 10 years? We'll go 10 years.
10 years. I'd love to be, if you looked at a week to week, it's doing some, obviously I'll be selfish, doing a bit of training myself. I still want to, there's
some good bike riding down there as well.
There is.
On the back of Jarawa.
Mate.
I'll take you on some great bike rides.
There you go. So I'll be paddling. I can see myself just getting lost. Not lost, I don't mean lost in the ocean, but there's so many great headlands down there. And I can just see myself, that's where I learned to paddle. So I can just see myself hopefully paddling down there, potentially Danny and Andy are next to me on a ski. Maybe we've got a tinny out there. Maybe we've got a jet ski. Taking the kids to sport or to footy on the weekends. I'm driving them up to Sydney and just engulfing them into the things that they love and giving them the best opportunity, not to be a professional sports person, but just the best opportunities of life, whether it's art or music or drama or whatever. I'm just going to hammer them on, you've got to find something that you love. So giving the time to them, camping, fishing, spending time on the South Coast. And obviously there's a selfish part there of wanting to sort of potentially in the future just get into surf life saving, some coaching or, giving, whether it's high performance. I feel like I've learned so much in my career and I'd love to sort of give it back or share it somehow. So I'm not sure how that will sort of look, but I've had moments in my career where I've helped individuals in different sports and that's felt awesome. But yeah, obviously I know so much about my sport and it'd be cool to help some of the kids down there in the next few years, hopefully become like another me.
I could go a whole lot more questions on exercise physiology, but I don't think our audience I think they've got enough on that. So
yeah, we'll cut it.
In wrapping, I'm going to do the flip. Is there a question in anticipation today you thought I might ask that I haven't? A key question. Or the flip, is there a question you want to ask me?
To be honest, that's some of the, you might think I'm pissing in your pocket here, Maisie, but that's one of the most detailed, informative, question answers I've ever done. I think obviously because you're based in that, the same environment, so you know what buttons and what questions to sort of ask, but I've never been asked a lot of that stuff today.
Oh,
so I'm just appreciative.
I love hearing that.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a lot better than going, Maisie, to be honest, this is the biggest shit show I've ever done, mate. Your questions are horrible.
Honestly, I looked at, as I said, what was going to be, and normally I like to go into interviews or whatever and just not looking at it because I used to, but there's no point looking at it now. But yeah, it's just nice to be sitting here with an expert, someone that's obviously a lead in their field, and to go through my journey. And it's nice to reflect sometimes. So I just appreciate it.
Yeah, I like hearing that. There's a term in coaching psychology called lag time, and lag time is catching up with how others see you. Yeah. I reckon that lag time for you is going to be huge. You're really going to have a lot of as you make that transition in the next 12 months. And
I sit here and I'm like, shit, my career has been 15 years. I have won this, or I have gotten through that, and just all that stuff. And I think it's that. As an athlete, as you can imagine, you're chasing that next thing all the time. So it is nice to sit down and just reflect on it, and to be on a podcast like this that's, obviously very successful with a lot of other successful people. It's just, there's a bit of maybe ego coming out of me. That feels nice.
You've got to have a bit of ego to do what you do.
Yeah.
You do, yeah. I've really enjoyed today. Really enjoyed it. And I'm really looking forward to continuing the fitness relationship. When you're in Kiama, I'm definitely going to take you through a few rides.
You've got a lifetime membership, mate.
And also, I see a number of different activities you can shift towards. And if I can help in any of those, speaking, coaching, I see you with a really nice portfolio career. Not doing one thing, but doing a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, I've always thanks, mate, and that means a lot. And I've always Kel's the same. She runs a couple of different businesses, and we've always wanted, similar to you, right? That's probably why we get on.
I've got non-diagnosed ADHD, and it can be a superpower. It really can.
Yeah, you just constantly being busy and chasing something and doing something. So it's I definitely think, it's not going to be, living in Kiama and doing just one thing. I won't be, not that I won't be happy. I'd like to be doing different things.
You will. Yeah.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers. Appreciate it. Legend.
It's Angela from the Performance Intelligence team, and I am sitting with Ali Day psychologist Lisa Martin to reflect on the conversations between Andrew and Ali. Lisa, Ali was very clear about how much you've influenced his personal and professional life, and we wanted to bring your voice into the story. Lisa, how did it feel to hear Ali speak so highly of you and your influence on him?
Oh, look, I would be lying to say it was a surprise, because Ali's so open with how appreciative he is all the time. I think of everyone who knows him, whether you're his coach or sports psych or anyone in his circle. You know, he spends a lot of time being grateful and talking about how grateful he is for your time and everything like that. So, but I mean, it is always very special. It makes me feel like a little bit embarrassed to a certain extent, because I'm probably not the best at accepting, you know, the praise that he gives, because he does all the work. and you know, we just, as his support team, everybody just likes to sit and watch and amaze at what he does out there, which is the hard stuff. So I feel like my stuff's the easy stuff, and he's just a really, really good client. You know, I think with Ali, he always just implements everything that we talk about to the best of his ability. And I think that, you know, that's a great credit to him and his work ethic and just his ability to put things into action that he thinks might be effective for his performance.
It's interesting. I started the question about asking how you felt, and towards the end of your response, you started talking about him again. Which is probably a reflection on the great relationship that the two of you have built together. Lisa, one of the observations I made listening to the podcast with Ali and Andrew was that Ali wasn't a standout rock star athlete from the start, but he worked really hard and he was really proactive in seeking out help to give him the edge. When you think back about when you first started working with Ali, what stood out to you about him, both as an athlete and as a person?
Oh, look, he's always been consistent. He's the guy that everybody knows is Ali. So he's very open. He's very expressive from the start. He was always really, really keen to, I guess, learn about everything he could possibly learn about. He has a lot of questions. He takes a lot of notes. You know, I think he's, over the years, as we've worked together, it's less about fixing things, and it's more about like fine tuning his mindset as we go through over the decade that we've been working together, or 12 or 13 years or whatever it has been. It's been a long time. We've kind of grown up together in a way, and me professionally and personally. But he's just always been the same guy. He's genuine. He cares more about, you know, what's going on with me and my family sometimes than he does about his performance. And I think, you know, it's like, Ali, we're coming back to you now. Let's talk about you. But that's just who he is. And if he wasn't that person, he wouldn't be Ali Day, that genuine concern for others.
He's a generous soul. You spoke about his curiosity and that willingness to learn and implement. Is that something that is quite rare that you find, or is that a common thing with the athletes that you work with?
Oh, look, everybody is different in their own ways, of course. Everyone brings something unique to the table. A lot of high-level athletes have that curiosity and that thirst for knowledge, thirst for the edge, the strategies that are going to give them that little 1%. And I think, you know, Ali's definitely one of those athletes. He's fairly, you know, comprehensive in his approach. He's very holistic in his approach to his performing, you know, both on and off the beach. But he doesn't just want to perform in his sport. He wants to be the best at everything. So he wants to be the best dad. He wants to be the best husband. He wants to be, you know, the best son, the best friend. You know, he's very much a high achiever at all levels. But I do find that his thirst for knowledge and his curiosity, it's part of who he is and part of a lot of high level athletes. But Ali has this tendency to be able to, I don't know, put things into action in a very balanced way that pays off. And I think that's a difficult skill. He kind of weeds out the things that he doesn't need and then he works his way and carves out a new path for himself, to get better and better every year.
He comes across as a very grounded individual, and I'm sure you've had a lot to do with influencing that. From your perspective, with working with him the 12, 13, 14 years ago, what or how has Ali grown or changed the most since you started working together?
When he first started working with me, he wasn't just looking to win races. He wanted to kind of understand himself better, and find a more sustainable way to perform and to live. I think his awareness of himself is his strength. So really becoming curious about his thoughts, his emotions, his beliefs, including his limiting beliefs, the stories he tells himself, what he can do to switch into autopilot, when he needs to, when he's out performing, but also what he needs to do, to be the best that he can be, so to speak, in those other areas. So I'd say that his awareness of himself is the thing that has kind of kept growing across the time, where, when I first met him, he was very, he was young, he was, I think, 21, 22 years old, doing great things already. And as he said in the podcast, he didn't really know why he was coming to see me, but he had kind of come off a very, very difficult Coolangatta Gold where, he had experienced some burnout. And I think, by Michael sending him to come and see me, just trying to get that balance right with the psychological and the physical. So I would say that, these days it's more about him becoming more able to ride those psychological waves as well as the physical waves, that his sense of self has given him that flexibility of self and that flexibility to manage himself better in hard times and good times.
It must be so rewarding to watch him grow like that in both his, as an athlete and in his personal life. You would have seen him get married and have kids, and he talked about you are now more than just a doctor-patient relationship, but there's a friendship that has grown there as well.
Yeah, look, I think, Ali's so professional on the beach, but the love that he has for his family, for Kel and the boys, that's what gives him the passion and the drive to go out there and keep doing what he does. And that's something that's so, you got to respect him in terms of the level of commitment that he has, not only to his sport, but to his family. I think as most sports psychologists, we kind of spend a bit of time on the beach as well as, having sessions. I think the whole time I was in America, which was 4.5 years, Ali and I were doing Zoom sessions similar to this. So, we kept in contact, and I watched him on the drone basically win all of these races when he came back from his wrist injuries where he broke his wrists. That was a pretty dark time. And I was in Australia at that time, but then after that, I moved to America. So we continued, seeing each other on Zoom. And so we've had face-to-face meetings, we've had Zoom meetings, we've been on the beach. Sometimes I've had sessions at his Airbnb prior to a competition. Kel and the boys are always there, and they're a great support. And he's just so lucky with, the people that he has around him that, he builds relationships with all of his inner sanctum, so to speak. So it's really a privilege. It's a privilege to be involved. Look, and I just think that, he's living proof that mental performance work isn't just about crises. When you have a crisis, you go and see a sports psychologist. It's for creating greatness that lasts. And I think it's just his commitment to the task of, working on the mental side of things, getting the shifts in there that actually see you kind of come back and trust yourself. And then, you've got to let your skills and fitness speak then.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your reflections, Lisa. It sounded like Ali was very lucky, but also worked really hard at not just developing himself, but gathering the right people and putting in that effort to develop those relationships around him to help him become the person that he is now. And it's really great to hear how that journey that you guys had together has contributed to his growth as an athlete. Thank you so much for your time, Lisa, and those reflections, and look forward to, seeing how Ali goes in the next competition that he has, his final competition.
Yeah, so this is the last year, and and he will be competing at the Coolangatta Gold this weekend. So it's a new format, so that'll be exciting, and of course it's part of the series now. So again, that's something new and it's something challenging. It's a bit of an adventure. So he'd be really looking forward to that and looking to get into that and do the very best he can. And I guess, looking back, what stands out most about working with Ali is it's not just the titles or the comebacks. It's the person that he's become through it all. And it would be remiss of me not to mention just the level of his of the humility that he has. So he's so humble, and I don't know many people, I don't think any athletes that have achieved the level to which he has achieved and has just stayed that same person the whole time, just, humble, curious, and just having that willingness to keep learning. So, it's been a real pleasure to provide the reflection on Ali and his amazing career, and I wish him nothing but the best.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much.